Hello, rational thinkers of the world. My name is Gerard Furi, and today I would like to give you my elevator pitch about why I think scientists, especially good scientists, should actually experiment and do testing with psychedelics, and in particular, the psychedelics of 5-MeO. And I went through a bit of trouble, so I encourage you to watch my whole video, see what I have to say. I went through some trouble and this morning I made this painting. It is meant to be Albert Einstein, and of course you can read the text that I wrote. Now, that's not a quote. The sentiment I was going for there with that little statement that I wrote on the painting is that Einstein would support, I hope, I believe, testing with psychedelics to see what is really going on. So why, taking a step back, why do we know that general relativity or special relativity, how do we know it is true? That's an important question. When Einstein first came up with his ideas, it was interesting, and it's a potentially breakthrough theory, okay? But the scientific world didn't just accept it like that. They needed to do an experiment of some kind. And how we actually validated relativity for the first time, well, it was done by a chap called Arthur Eddington, and he observed the actual curvature of space-time around the sun because he very carefully measured the position of a star behind the sun during a solar eclipse. And he could tell that the star wasn't exactly where it should be because it had been curved. Space-time had been curved by the gravitation of the sun. So that is how we know that relativity is real, and since then many more experiments have validated that. But the bottom line is, someone tested it. And that is what I'm saying here really. That's the meat of what I'm trying to convey, is when someone presents a breakthrough theory, I think personally it is the responsibility of scientists to test that theory. And wouldn't it have been a huge shame if Einstein wrote all these things about relativity and no one even bothered trying to see if it's true or not? No one thought about experimentation or testing, and then we wouldn't even know about it today, potentially. So that's my introduction for you. In terms of psychedelics and what they can reveal to us, what am I proposing for you? Basically, it is a breakthrough theory. And to be honest, I'm not really proposing this. These ideas have been around for thousands of years, but they've been framed in terms of spirituality, and scientists generally stay away from that. But we don't even need to touch spirituality here today, because I'm going to propose more of a scientific idea of what psychedelics can reveal to yourself. So, my basic proposal is to solve the hard problem of consciousness, or to solve the question of, is consciousness fundamental or is it created by the brain? And my proposal is that consciousness is not created by the brain. Instead, consciousness is somewhat universal. It pervades everything. And instead, the mind, this is sort of my idea now, the human mind and all animal minds, they have encapsulated, or you could almost say imprisoned, consciousness because evolutionarily that has been very useful. If one animal has consciousness, it can use that for evolutionary Darwinian reasons, and the better an animal is at utilizing consciousness but also imprisoning it, the more successful that animal can become. And that includes the human being. So the reason that we don't see that consciousness pervades everything is because our consciousness is encapsulated by the Darwinian forces of our animal self. So that's my proposal for you. And at a deeper level, or let's just touch on spirituality. The Hindus, what they've been saying for thousands of years, is essentially that the Atman, your individual consciousness, is actually exactly the same essence as the Brahman, which is the ultimate grand reality. Okay, so that's my proposal. And how can you test that? Well, you probably know, through psychedelic use. So there's one thing that's special though about living in this age today, which is the psychedelics that we have at our disposal. I think they are much, much better for scientific inquiry, for scientific internal testing than the psychedelics of the past have been. Now, I fully want to clarify my stance that if you do decide to take a psychedelic, even in a scientific pursuit, that we do so responsibly. Because to see that your Atman is the same as the Brahman, that can actually be a bit of a scary process because your identity will actually dissolve. That is the whole mechanism that I propose to you, how a psychedelic can actually reveal the grand universal truth, perhaps, that consciousness is all-pervasive. Because if your Darwinian brain is encapsulating and imprisoning perhaps consciousness, what a psychedelic does is it just unwinds, unravels that born of created yarn so that your consciousness can merge back into all that is pervading. And it's like a bubble that gets popped. It's that simple. So some psychedelics, like the classic ones you've probably heard of, like LSD and magic mushrooms, they do unravel the brain quite a bit, and then all sorts of interesting things can happen, visuals can come up, and basically all the unseen parts of the human consciousness come up. But some psychedelics are very, very powerful. DMT is a famous one, but that is still very visual. Other psychedelics like 5-MeO-DMT and 5-MeO-MALT, they are much less visual, and really it's very scientific in a way, you could say. It's very piercing, it gets straight to the point. You don't have any weird things, you don't necessarily have any mystical experiences necessarily, but your sense of identity totally dissolves and your consciousness merges back with the Brahman. Okay? So I actually didn't want to make this topic very mystical, spiritual, because that might put some people off. But, sorry for my terminology. That's how I think about these things. But that's my bottom line for you, is if you have some sort of an objection, you could perhaps mention it in the comments. I'd be curious what that is, and maybe I can address that. But really, what a shame would it be if a breakthrough idea is presented to science and people don't try it out? So to wrap this topic up, what are the repercussions or the consequences of this potential theory? And basically, I don't want to tell you. But what I will say, I don't want to get more mystical, spiritual, because then people are going to not even try this. Just go see for yourself. But what I will say is, right now, the standard model of particle physics is very successful. Scientists love it. It makes very good predictions. But as you no doubt know, the standard model only describes 5% of the observable reality. Most of it is dark matter, and even more of it is dark energy, actually. And I'm not drawing a one-to-one conclusion, but basically what I'm saying is the state of reality is far beyond what the normal human consciousness is perceiving, and that when we use a psychedelic to pop the bubble, the Darwinian mind's bubble of consciousness, once that gets popped and it sees the whole consciousness, then just a brand new, big, mystical world opens up. And that is what I would like you to discover for yourself. And I personally genuinely think that a beautiful integration can happen here between science and psychedelics, or between science and a rational, intellectually honest spirituality. No doubt, a lot of scientific people, they don't like spirituality because there's so much woo-woo associated with it. So much nonsense, let's be frank. And the reason why, I humbly think, is a lot of people have these grand spiritual experiences, but they haven't been trained in rationality or in intellectual honesty and just, that scientific mindset of honest skepticism, not overly skeptical. I genuinely very much feel, I hope you do too, that the job of a scientist is to be skeptical, but interested in trying new things, because science can never move forwards if we don't test out breakthrough theories, and that's the bottom line.